Hello. So today we're going to have an Edpuzzle, and we have a chart here, a portion conversion chart, and it's partially filled out. So please get a piece of paper and a pencil or pen so that you can do some of this work also. I am going to extend the learning a little bit from yesterday so that we have a little bit more information about how to solve some of these bigger numbers. It's going to be so be ready for some learning as well, not just practice. All right. So if we have 19%, remember what we do with that to get to a fraction. Percent means of 100. So I'm going to write of 100 or out of 100. So we've got 19% is out of 100. What we are doing to get our decimals, we're actually dividing it by 100. And so our decimal is here right now. We go backwards 2. So our decimal becomes, 0.19. All right. I actually need to do that in green. I'm going to try to keep it consistent, 0.19. And we say that as 19 hundredths. Now, as a fraction, we write that as 19 over 100. All right, so our first one is done. Now we have 32 hundredths, and that is written as a fraction. We need to figure out the percent and the decimal. 32 hundredths is said this way as a fraction. As a decimal, it's said the same way, and it's written as 0.32 or 32 hundredths. Now, what we are doing when we get to a percent is we are literally multiplying by 100, and that means moving our decimal to the right 2 places. So that means we have 32%. All right. Now I want to go back to 32 hundredths real quick. This is one of those extension pieces, but it really isn't because it has to do with what we were doing before winter break. We're going to show 32 hundredths in its lowest common terms. We do that by using the giant 1, and we do that with division and using the greatest common factor. Or a common factor simplifies it a little bit, but the greatest common factor simplifies it as low as it can go. So my greatest common factor, if I figure out between 32 and 100, so here's something that's going to be helpful to you. It's going to be helpful to just memorize the factors of 100 and then use those to see which one of those factors will go into 32. That's the greatest. So with 100, we have 1 times 100. We have 2 times 50. 3 doesn't go into it, but 4 does. 4 times 25, like quarters, 4 quarters for $1. We have 5 times 20. 6 doesn't go into it. 7 doesn't go into it. 8, 9, but 10 does. And those are all of our multiplication facts. So our factors of 100 are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 25. This is a Post-it note, so this keeps sticking to me. 50 and 100. Those are our factors of 100. Now, since when we divide with a giant 1, we have to use a giant 1 that will go into both the numerator and the denominator. We only have to check these to see which one of these numbers is the biggest number that will go into 32. So I'm going to start backwards. No number bigger than 32 is going to go into it. So we don't have to look at those two. 25 doesn't go into it. 25 times nothing is 32. 20 times nothing is 32. 10 times something, does that equal 32? No, because it's 10, 20, 30. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. No, 5 doesn't go into it. 4 times something, does that equal 32? Actually, yeah, 4 times 8. So 4 could be used. And 4 is our biggest number. They're both even, so 2 could be used, but we want to use 4 because it's the greatest common factor. So we're going to use 4 fourths. And if we use 4/4 as a giant 1, what does our new fraction become? Right, because remember we just go straight across. 32 divided by 4 is 8, because 8 times 4 is 32. And 100 divided by 4 is 25, because 25 times 4 is 100. So 8/25 is the same as 32 hundredths by using the giant 1 to simplify. Okay, we're going to keep this paper because it has our factors of 100 and it's going to make our life a little bit faster. Okay, if we have 85 hundredths, to get to our percent, we multiply by 100, which means we move the decimal point over to the right 2 places, and that becomes, 85%. As our fraction, it becomes 85 hundredths. Our fraction, it becomes, 85 100ths. Now, if we use our giant 1 to simplify or to show in lowest common terms, I'm going to use my 100. I'm going to look, it can't be a number less than 85, so 100 doesn't work. 50 times nothing equals 85. 25, 50, 75 doesn't go into 80. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, nope, doesn't work. 10 doesn't work, but 5 does, because 5 times something is going to equal 85. We got 5, 10, 15, 20. Well, 5 times 10 is 50. So 5 times 10 is 50, but we want to get up to 85. So 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85. So it's 7 more. So 10 plus 7 is 17. So 5 times 17 equals 85. We could have also figured it out by saying 85 divided by 5. 5 goes into 8 one time. We have 35 left over 7 times. 35 minus 0. So we've got 5/5 we're going to use as our giant 1, which comes to, 17 20ths, because 20 times 5 is 100. 17 times 5 is 85. Okay, now we get into a little bit trickier. We've got 5 and 25 hundredths. Now, when we do the percent, what we do is we multiply it by 100 and we move the decimal over 2 places. So this actually becomes, 525%. Okay. Now, in percents are always out of 100. So what we do here is we say it's 525 over 100. Now remember, every fraction is actually a division problem. So what we can do is we can say 525 divided by 100. So we got 100 goes into 525 5 whole times. We subtract that, we have 25 left. So that becomes 25 100ths. So that equals 5 and 25 100ths. Now we can show in smaller and reduced terms, simplify 25 100ths. 25 actually goes into both 25 and 100. So if we use the giant 1, it would be 1/4. I'm not going to go ahead and put that in there yet, but because I'm kind of running out of room there. Okay, taking that same idea and looking at starting with a percent, we have 433. Remember, what we can do is what we're actually doing to get the decimals, we're dividing by 100. So we're going to divide this by 100, and that means moving our decimal point to the left. Okay, so that becomes, what is our decimal? 4 and 33 hundredths. And now as a fraction, 433 over 100, or 4 and 33 hundredths. All right. Now we've got a 1 and 5 100ths as a fraction. So I'm going to start with my decimal on this. I've got 1 whole, so I've got 1 and my decimal. Okay. Now I've got 5 hundredths. I don't have any tenths, so I'm going to put a 0 for the tenths and a 5 for our hundredths. So 1 and 5 hundredths is the same as saying 1 and 5 hundredths. What is that as a percentage? Yeah, we're basically multiplying this by 100. So we're moving our decimal over 2 places to the right, and we have 105%. Okay, the last one. We have a fraction, but the fraction is not out of 100. It's out of 10. So we've got 2 tenths. To do any of this work, we have to get this fraction to be out of 100. So we have to use the giant 1 to multiply to get this to be an equivalent fraction with 100 as the denominator. What do we multiply 10 by to get it to become 100? Yeah, so we multiply 10 times 10 equals 100. So our giant 1 becomes 10 tenths. And our numerator becomes 2 times 10 is 20. 20 100ths. Okay, now that we have 20 100ths here, now we can do these pieces. All right, so 20 100ths as a decimal is 20 100ths. Now we could just write it as 2 tenths because the 0 here is meaningless when it just is at the very end of it. And with our our percent, we multiply by 100. So we go 1, 2 places over for our percent, and we have 20%. All right. So we are combining our giant 1 information from what we did before winter break. In some cases, we're going to be using our giant 1 to multiply, and in some cases, we're going to be using our giant 1 to divide. And that's something that we're just going to practice a little bit of, but so we'll get there on some of those things. Remember, we're going to be working on this week and next week. And our quiz is going to be on Friday, January 29th. So the 29th is going to be our quiz on this. All right. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.